Rise of Parisians. Fall of a mighty king. Series of ambitions, betrayals, revenges, and murders. This is the French Revolution. Liberty, equality, and fraternity is such a powerful slogan associated with the French Revolution that it keeps mesmerizing many to date. In fact, this slogan romanticized the revolt against the authority everywhere. Thus, French Revolution is popularly considered the beginning of the new era for commoners. Reality of French Revolution, however, was beyond the liberty and equality of the common man. Let's reconnect the dots of the history of revolution's crossroad. French Revolution was not an event but a series of crises. The first major crisis was the Fronde War in 1648. Then, within a century, bourgeois militia marched through Paris and stormed the Bastille prison in 1789. This followed Reign of Terror, in which thousands of so-called enemies of revolution were beheaded. Then came Thermidorian reaction, in which key revolutionary figures were guillotined and First French Republic was established. It followed by Napoleon's First Empire. Then came July Revolution in 1830. And yet there was another revolution in 1848 called February Revolution. These series of crises together formed French Revolution and contained various major episodes of wars, bloodsheds and massacres until the Fifth French Republic was born. A common understanding of French Revolution is that it was a public reaction to clutching poverty. In fact, it was plotted by nobility of France, which were wary of the behaviors of kings. Even after Treaty of Westphalia, French kings continued to centralize the powers to the crown. Louis XIV faced a 5-year civil war called the Fronde. It was a war waged by various princes and parliamentarians against the king. Although this civil war is rarely mentioned as a precursor of later French Revolution, King harshly defeated the nobility and established a more absolute rule with all powers in his hand. Whereas the nobility became absolute subject to king's humiliations. To keep his absolute clutch more firm and to avoid any future civil war from nobility, Louis XIV extended his idea of Palace of Versailles. He moved his court fully to Versailles in 1682. Apart from feeding his narcissist personality, this enforced relocation of the capital from Paris to Versailles also served the important political goal of continuous surveillance over nobility. This went deep into the factions of nobility, who were insulted by king and his loyal. Common understanding is that Bastille was beginning of the revolution in France. Yet attack on Bastille had no revolutionary goals like overthrowing monarchy. It had same objectives as previous civil war. The Fronde had had a century earlier, to limit the powers of the king and secure more role for French bourgeois. The sought-after model was power division in nearby English monarchy and nobility. In fact, Bastille Attack well achieved this goal. The bourgeois militia which attacked Bastille was formerly headed by famous French aristocrat, Marquis de Lafayette. The militia adopted famous tricolour French flag in which white represented the king. There was no demand of removal of the King Louis XVI. He reigned 3 years after the Bastille attack. It's really a strange trade. French prompted American Revolution against Great Britain, and ironically American Revolution caused French revolt. Many French aristocrats fought on the side of Americans. A famous name is Marquis de Lafayette. As previously mentioned, he was the man who led bourgeois militia in Paris which attacked Bastille. Just after a month of smashing Bastille, Lafayette drafted Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen in August 1789. American statesman Thomas Jefferson also helped in drafting French Declaration of Rights. It is also important to note that Lafayette was already a member of National Constituent Assembly of France. In its tug-of-war with the king for power grab, the National Assembly can be said real initiator of the French crisis. The traditional French Assembly, then called a State General, had three classes, namely First Estate, consisting of clergies, Second Estate, comprising of nobility, and Third Estate, formulated of wealthy bourgeois. It was the bourgeois who later termed themselves as commoners, initiated the movement against the king. Eventually, they overtook the powers from the King of France and converted a State General to National Assembly in 1789. Reign of Terror followed it, and the dream of common citizen was exploited by the bourgeois. First French Republic was declared but could not survive due to culture of terror and revenge. Unfortunately, so-called the government of the people died in few years and an empire emerged out of the First Republic under the dictatorship of Napoleon. Although many modern ideas of republic, right of self-determination, National Assembly, idea of human rights and women rights were born during the crisis of French Revolution. Based on these fancy phrases, one may think revolution, a beginning of new era. In fact, it remained as dark as night for the people in French colonies, and no modern idea could crack French hostile imperialism in French colonies. Rather, it resulted in a new era of French colonialism. Immediate after revolution in 1798, France invaded Egypt as well as many other countries. France kept African colonies till 1960 and left after a bloody independence struggle by the local African communities. Over 1 million people died in struggle against French colonialism in Algeria alone. French Revolution can be said a dream betrayed. It gave birth of many new political slogans, still mesmerizing people around the globe, leveraging politicians play with the dreams. Thank you for watching. Please give your feedback and comments below in comment section. We hope you will consider subscribing our channel. Bye bye.